artists, this video is going to show you how to prepare your paper for your self-portrait project once you have your photo taken and you've used the grid app on your iPad to get it into the 7 by 7 inch grid. So in order for that to work on paper, then we need to create a square image with a 7 by 7 grid. So when you picked up your supplies in your sketchbook, you should have this piece of paper, a square with a 7 by 7 inch grid on it. So what we're going to do is start by tracing the outline of this and then marking where each of those inch marks are and then connecting our lines. So if you have a ruler to connect your lines with, that will work best. But if you don't, I'll show you how you can use this paper to draw your lines as well. Your pencil, when we draw the grid, we want to draw our lines really, really lightly so that they don't show up when we're all done with our photo. So use your HB pencil, the yellow pencil, and be really thoughtful as you're drawing your lines on the paper to press really lightly. Your lines just need to be dark enough for you to see them, but not any darker than that. So my first step is to flip to a clean page in my sketchbook. And in fact, I go a couple pages after anything that I've drawn before, just in case I made any, if I pressed hard on a previous page, I don't want there to be any indents on this for when I'm adding value that you would be able to see. I want it to be clean as possible. And then I'll take this piece of paper and center it and lightly trace the outline. So you don't need to use a ruler for this at all, just lightly trace the outline of the paper. And as you're putting your pencil on the paper, be mindful to not push too hard. Don't put too much pressure on the paper. You're drawing just light enough for you to see it. So you can just hardly see this line, but it's enough to work for me. Then I'm going to put this back on, line it up, and just in case you didn't have a ruler, this grid is already set up for you with 7 inches by 7 inches. So instead of using a ruler to make your grid, you can just use this as a guide. So at each of these marks, I'm going to make a little tick mark. And take your time to be exact, because if you go through this process and you just kind of rush it, you're not exact, then your lines might be crooked or they might not be in the right spot, meaning that our whole process with using the grid isn't actually going to work out that well. So please take your time with this. There is no need to rush. And you'll want to do it like I did on all 4 sides. So when you move the paper, you should see those little tick marks on the outside of the square that you drew. So now at this point, we want to connect and create a straight line from one side to the other. So if you have a ruler, you can take your ruler and just make sure your ruler is lined up along each of those tick marks. And again, really lightly, don't press hard on your paper, but just really lightly draw your line across. If you don't have a ruler, that's okay. The other direction, I'll show you what you can use instead. If you don't have a ruler, you can use this to kind of line up in between. And I had this printed on cardstock, so it's a little bit thicker. So you can just use that as your straight edge, and that works just as well. Just remember, pressing really lightly, no dark lines on your grid. Ta-da! There you go. And something that I like to do to help me kind of keep track is to label each column and row. And I kind of do it like they have in, if you've played the game Battleship before. So letters going in the alphabetical order across and numbers going down, or vice versa. You can have numbers on top, letters on the side. But just make sure you have 7 squares across and 7 going up and down, and you should be good to go. Next, we're ready to start drawing our portrait.